So I'm sorry Brian left, because I was going to talk to him about his, I got to get over on the X here, Steve's telling me. I was going to talk to him about his slides that he had last month, and I'm just sorry I didn't rise to the occasion with the stick figures, but that was absolutely wonderful. Most of you that know me know that I network quite a bit. So I talk with 2 to 3 people a day, usually, and have for the last few years. So in 2016, as I was talking with some of the people about networking, they were in transition, and they really didn't know what it was like to be in transition. They've worked for this corporate company for a number of years, and they just weren't sure, gosh, I want to get another job, or do I do my own thing? So it led me to think, why don't I take my experiences that I've had for X number of years and put it in a document as tools to help these types of people. So that's what my talk is about today. It's about some tools from the corporate world that will assist you if you choose to go into an entrepreneurial position, to own your own business. So I'm actually writing a book on it, and it should be released February, March. I've had a lot of good comments about it and some of the pieces that I've given. And so what I'm going to share with you today is some tools, 7 tools that I call them, for your toolbox. Now, I remember talking to my children and saying to them, and I have 4, you need to think of your career as a toolbox, and you're constantly adding tools to your toolbox. Tools of experience, tools of moving around and doing different things. So that's the theme behind what I've come up with, is adding tools to your toolbox to help you be successful as an entrepreneur, no matter what you're doing. It all begins really with a vision and core values and critical success factors. So just this week, I was meeting with a tax specialist. His name was John Neiman. And John said, with all the business owners that I talk to, nobody seems to be wanting to grow their business. They're just maintaining it. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm not sure who he's talking to, but most of the people that I know around here are wanting to grow their business. But it all begins with a vision. It starts with what it is you want to accomplish, where you want to go. So one of the chapters in my book is going to talk about how to establish your own vision. And, the end result is going to be income. So I want to be a $25 million company. When I hit that, I'm going to set a new vision for where I'm going. The core values are really, for a small business, extremely important, because they are integrity and ethics. And believe me, it becomes a slippery slope if you don't have those in your business, because this is a small community, St. Louis is, and they know who has integrity and who does not. So the integrity and ethics are just 2 things that are core values within your business that you need to think about, and certainly stick with it. Critical success factors. We have 4 within Alliance Technologies. They revolve around the employee, they revolve around the customer, our branding or market penetration, and financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility to the partners, to the owners, and really to the employees that we have. Everything we do revolves around just those 4 critical success factors. Absolutely everything we do. It keeps it all in focus for us. And we meet quarterly with a wonderful facilitator that helps us stay on target with our critical success factors. Yes, a marvelous mentor. A wonderful facilitator too. Another chapter in the book talks about the team building tools and techniques. So when you're out with a large group or just your employees, what are some of the tools and techniques and tips and tricks you use? And I've just are going to highlight a few of them. Brainstorming, multi-voting, prioritization matrix, and Pareto analysis. Now, many of you probably know about brainstorming, or you think you do, but there's really a lot of do's and don'ts about brainstorming for it to truly be successful. If you're going to use a multi-voting methodology, what that does is take a large number of ideas, and it provides you with a process of narrowing them down to 1 or 2 that you choose as a group to work on. It's a great methodology if you haven't seen it. Prioritization matrix. I used this at Stone Carley when we were trying to come up with a new 401k program. We had 4 companies come in and bid. We had established criteria, and this criteria we established numbers to, and we were able to multiply and came up with our decision objectively instead of subjectively. So it helps quite a bit with that. Pareto analysis, that's the 80-20 rule. We use this at American Airlines at DFW Airport to map out some of the departure delays. And when it came down to it, it was really the boarding process. So it helped us focus on that. Then you got your fishbone diagram. It's a root cause analysis. How many have ever seen a fishbone diagram? I'm so glad there's only a few hands come up, because guess what? There is a fishbone diagram. And it begins with the question that you have, restaurant wait time, and there are certain main bones behind it. And really the essence of what you're doing is trying to ask why, and come to something that appears in several different bones that you could use as the potential reason as to why you're having an issue. So the Ishikawa fishbone diagram is used for root cause analysis, and it's really a good tool. In the presentation skills chapter, I'm going to talk about the voice and the visual elements. And really, when I was a Toastmaster, Dr. Albert Morabian had told us, and we believe it, that in a presentation such as this, it's 55% visual of what you see. For someone like you that's going to walk away from a presentation, what you're going to remember is 55% of the visual. 38% of it is the voice, and the way you use your voice, the inflection in your voice, your confidence in your voice. 7% is the content. So I've always said, if I look good and sound good, you're not going to remember what I tell you. Oh, extended eye control. If you've noticed, I'm floating from position to position. And there are several techniques you can use as a presenter to help you with your eye control. Rather than looking above the crowd, you want to look at the faces in the crowd, and you want to make some contact with some of those faces so you know that they're paying attention. Now, who sat in a church and thought the preacher was talking directly to them? There is some extended eye contact for sure. All right, clearing the visual is a mistake that a lot of people make. And what that means is, if you use a slide or a visual, what you want to do is explain it to the audience first in terms of what it is they're looking at. Then you aim towards something specific on that chart you want them to know, and bang, you hit your point. So that is what's called ready, aim, and fire. And most people do fire, aim, ready. They start talking about the visual and people don't really know what it is, and all what you're doing is focusing on, what is this? If you just explain it up front, it'll help you a great deal in getting your point across. And then podium techniques. If you use a podium, do you put your hands on it? How do you use your notes with it? Do you bang on it with your fingers? So tips and tricks there. As far as a podium, if you're using one for doing a speech, and it's a lengthy speech, and you have papers to remind you, you merely reach with your left hand and slide that right piece of paper across to get to your next one. How many times have you seen people flip it over, have a 3-ring binder, and they're doing this? No. You just touch it and drag it across, and they'll never know you're switching pages. So just some tips there. Facilitation skills. I talk a lot about that in my chapter, and it's really someone like Cynthia who's come up at the last minute to host a meeting, does a great job, has the segues down, referring to the agenda, keeping it all on track together and moving forward. She does a fabulous job. But there are a lot of tips and tricks of being a good facilitator in a large group of people. And some of it is the questioning techniques that you have to use to draw out information to make sure you're moving forward. Some of it is the facilitator do's and don'ts, things you don't want to do, things you do want to do. And then I've got dealing with difficult behavior. That's probably the biggest piece that I have in there. And it's identifying all the difficult behaviors you have within a group when you're trying to move forward, and how do you as a facilitator deal with them. And it's some great tips in there when we get to that particular point. Next is re-engineering in you. It's really change in the workplace and change within you. How does it affect you? And what is it that you can do to keep your equilibrium? Well, we've always known that if the capacity is equal to the challenge, everything will be in order. But if if your capability, sorry, I used capacity. If your capability is less than your challenge, you're going to get pretty stressed out. And usually it's going to look like this. I've got too much to handle. I've got way too much going on. This is awkward. I'm going to give up on this. So how do you keep that all in order? It's really resilience. And I've defined here resilience, and I've shared this with you before. And it's really the ability to absorb high levels of disruptive change and minimizing that dysfunctional behavior. So resilience within your person will really help you move forward. Here are some characteristics of being a resilient person. Proactive, positive, organized, flexible, focused. Very important for you to be a resilient person, to move through change in life as it hits you. Making empowerment happen, another very big one. And I know my time is running short, so I'm going to speed through some of this. But you need to, as a boss, create an encouraging environment so people feel comfortable. It's okay for them to make mistakes. American Airlines, people were afraid to make mistakes, so therefore they didn't make any. So you need to encourage your team to make mistakes, because if they're making mistakes, they're doing something. Now, if they make the same mistake 2 or 3 times, then you got to deal with it. But they shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. And you need to provide the tools for them to be successful, and then step aside. At Reuters, I had my boss tell me, hey, on such and such a date, we just purchased this company in Italy. Jim, we need to have all signage, business cards, all the receptionists saying the same thing, etc. And you need to get it done by this date, make it happen. Talk about a challenge, but I rose to the occasion. We made it happen. Man, I was so excited. And I still remember to this day that meeting I had with her, when she dumped that on me and said, make it happen, and then got out of my way. So it was great. Trust in the workplace, huge. You've got to maintain trust in the workplace, within your employees, within your partnerships. And here is my definition of trust in the workplace. I'm not going to read it to you, but so important. And it goes hand in hand with the empowerment. Empowerment and trust will get the job done. But if you lose trust in the workplace, you can only imagine what's going to happen. As I wind up on my last couple slides before Mark hands me my numbers, I just want to recap some of the chapters that are in this book, from the strategic planning to the team building, presentation skills, you and re-engineering and change management, employee empowerment, trust, and I've got a few other things in that book as well. But these are just a few of the tools that I think will help an entrepreneur be successful with their own business. So with that, I'll take any questions that you have.
Jim, could you clarify that one point you made on dealing with difficult behaviors? Do you have a tip or two around that when you run up against that in a...
Yeah, actually I have a one-page sheet, and it's how you deal with somebody in a group environment. Because I've done this so much, you've got some guy that wants to dominate all the time as a difficult behavior. And what they haven't learned is to let everybody else speak. But if you allow that person to dominate that discussion, then pretty soon it's going to all swing their way, and everybody's going to check out, and they're not going to participate. So how do you deal with that person that's dominating that discussion? How do you deal... Shoot him? How do you deal with the boss that comes in and joins the group? And what you're trying to do is get feedback from everybody. You don't want that boss to dominate the conversation. So actually what I do as a facilitator is corner that person up front and tell him or her that, look, I want you to sit back and I want you to listen to what your team has to say, because if you speak, they're just going to follow your lead, and you don't want that. What you're encouraging them to do is speak up and talk. So those are just two examples of, Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
Jim,
ma'am.
a lot of the things that you shared with us are, I think, in part because you've had such a strong corporate background, and you've been able to apply a lot of that to your entrepreneurial success. I think probably one of the biggest challenges is finding the balance between the corporate structure and the entrepreneurial out-of-the-box thinking, and sort of resisting the corporate ideas. How do you coordinate that so it works well with people who think like that?
That is such an interesting question and kind of a tough one to answer. A lot of it, I guess I think of things in a process. And so I'm going to answer it this way. In the corporate world, you have processes to get things done. In our business, as a small business, we have lots of processes to get things done. So there really is no difference between the corporate environment and that environment if you look at all your activities as a process and have templates. Then, to me, it's very important, the last two pieces that I shared with you in terms of the empowerment. See, in large companies, they don't empower you as much. But in a smaller organization, you need to empower your employees to do the things they need to do to help you be successful. Because if they're successful, you will be successful. So the empowerment is a big one for an entrepreneur or business owner. And so is trust in the workplace. Huge, huge, as they say in New York. Huge. Did I answer that?
Well, yes, and I think in both cases it's a matter of getting the right people in the right place.
Yes, it's getting the
regardless of
right
thinking,
team on
yeah.
the bus with you for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And because of that, we take a long time to hire somebody. We really go through a lot of interviews with them and make sure they're the right one. Because when we hire someone, we want them to stay with us. And so far, we've been very successful with that. Other questions? If not, thank you so much for listening.